Hey, my friend, on this episode, we're going to talk about getting a good posture and getting rid of back pain. So, if you're someone who could improve their posture, which is most of us, or you need help getting rid of back pain, then you got to listen to this one. Let's get started. My guest today, Esther Gokhale, has been involved in integrative therapies all her life. As a young girl growing up in India, she helped her mother, a nurse, treat abandoned babies waiting to be adopted. This early interest in healing led her to study biochemistry at Harvard and Princeton, and later acupuncture at the San Francisco School of Oriental Medicine. After experiencing crippling back pain during her first pregnancy and unsuccessful back surgery, Gokhale began her lifelong crusade to vanquish back pain. Her studies at the Aplomb Institute in Paris and years of research in Brazil, India, Portugal, and elsewhere led her to develop the Gokhale method, a unique, systematic approach to help people find their body's way back to pain-free living. Gokhale's book, 8 Steps to a Pain-Free Back, has sold over 200,000 copies and has been translated into 10 languages. Gokhale has taught at corporations such as Google, Facebook, and presented at conferences such as TEDx Stanford and Ancestral Health Symposium. She's also consulted the trainers of San Francisco 49ers and several Stanford sports teams, and conducted workshops for physician groups at Stanford, Kaiser Permanente, Sutter Health, and UCSF. The New York Times gave Esther the title, The Posture Guru of Silicon Valley in 2013. Esther, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks Show.
Very glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show. It's an honor to have you on. We met about a year ago at the Ancestral Health Conference, which we'll get into in just a second. But before we do, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got into posture in the first place.
Well, I got into it the hard way by having a very severe back problem, an L5-S1, extremely bad herniation. And I was trying all sorts of methodologies to help it. The conventional ones, physical therapy, strengthening, stretching, and then the more alternative ones, massage, chiropractic, acupressure, acupuncture, checking my head. And I just wasn't getting anywhere. And finally, I ended up having a laminectomy discectomy. And that helped for a while. And then a year later, I had a reherniation. So it was really miserable. And they wanted to do another surgery. And that's when I was fortunate enough to get off the wagon. And yeah, wow. So that's how I came to this. And then, you know, the things that helped me that are in my book are, you know, what we are now teaching other people who have serious back problems or not so serious back problems. We're starting to get people sooner, which is nice. You know, people who want to prevent having back problems, people who look at their parents and grandparents and see them hunched and want to do something before it's later in the cycle. So that's always wonderful.
Well, it's always great to listen or hear from somebody that's gone through the pain themselves, gone through all these therapies, and then when they didn't help them, found some alternate ways to treat themselves or self-treat or find something new. How long did it take you to develop what we're going to discuss today?
You know, it's still being developed. It's an ongoing project, you know, which is why our teachers study indefinitely. Like they keep working with us because we keep evolving new methodologies, like we've now got sensors for the back to give a real-time read of the spine. And we've done research on the data we've been collecting from our students. And so it keeps getting refined. I would say there's been a huge burst of growth in the last 3 months because we've discovered, we was, you know, like a lot of people, forced to reconsider teaching online. And we've discovered ways that are effective beyond expectation. So, and then, you know, we've also realized that you need a lot of threads to make people really integrate this work into their bodies. Like, you know, we were always more than a one-trick pony. Most methods are sort of one-trick ponies. You know, you work with the fascia, or you adjust the bones, or you do an cortisone injection. most of those don't work very well. They're not very effective. It's well known through randomized controlled trials in the crowdsourcing space that most things for back pain don't work well. And it's very sad because it is the number one cause of global disability. And, we have all kinds of cures and methods for cancers. And when it comes to simple old back pain, we're sort of helpless,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. We have always been for a long time, I would describe us as a 3-trick pony. It's like intellectual input, visual input, and kinesthetic input.
Oh,
Like
very
we
cool.
do hands-on work, we show images, and we explain. And it's got to look right, feel right, make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, I think we've become a dozen-trick pony because I've realized that it's not good enough to say, let's sit the way these people are sitting in indigenous cultures and in ancestral populations and in young children. You find common denominators in the way people sit, stand, bend, lift, etc. And that's the basis for the Gokhale method. But it takes more than that to excite people enough to want to keep returning. So at the beginning of the year, January 1st, I began a program where I show up every single day. It's for our alumni, and we're thinking about expanding it to the larger population and remind people of one little posture nugget that they work with for the day. So I do this live. I stay after for Q&A, and every day I teach a different nugget. And that has been just spectacularly successful because we've added fun. We have a little dance party at the beginning of it. And I show my little art pieces. I have all these sculptures from South India and Japanese dolls that all have beautiful posture. So, I'll usually reach for something and show, this is my Hopi frog that I bought just last year, and he's got externally rotated legs. And, so this has become a fun way for people to learn dance, music, culture, community, art. And so I would say, and then we've been developing all this technology and reminder systems and such. So it's become a dozen-trick pony. And we've gotten more and more effective in that process. So I'm very excited with all the developments and the growth.
Yeah, that's amazing. Kudos to you. Now, I met you, as I said earlier, at the Ancestral Health Conference or Symposium in San Diego last year, and I was sitting in the audience watching your presentation. I wasn't really sure because I hadn't heard of you before. And I think once you started showing images, which I started looking at and said, wow, this really drives home, because we can talk about it, right? But once you see a couple of images of people slumped over or bad posture compared to the good posture from the older days, it makes a stark difference, and it makes it clear in your mind what's missing. And of
Totally.
course, people want to improve that as this relates to back pain. So then, speaking on that vein, for the audience, how is ancestral or indigenous posture different from where we are today?
So I want to build on what you were talking about, how impactful the visual is.
Mm-hmm.
We have a huge visual cortex. And in our methodology, we decided, why not put that to use? Why not thread images into the weave of learning and remembering and reminding and all of that? So let me share a picture, because that is about as good a way as you can get to explain what is ancestral posture. So here we have a Greek statue, right? This is from times of old. And every self-respecting Greek statue has their behind for one. It's a very large angle at L5S1, and then up above, it's pretty straight, up and down. So I call this a J spine. And that's a huge claim, because the conventional wisdom is that you're supposed to have an S spine, that the human spine is S-shaped. And this is not what you find in these ancestral pictures, nor in people like the Ubang tribesmen. So these are indigenous tribal people who clearly have their behinds out behind, And that's what allows the behind to be so toned, because when you have your behind in its place, then every step you take becomes a rep. Yeah. And now you're getting 5,000 reps a day, right? If you're doing your 10K recommended steps, well, that'll tone the glutes. And if you're not doing it, good luck making up for that. There's a huge lost opportunity, and no sane person is going to want to push a weight 5,000 times in a gym, right? So there really isn't any way around doing life exercises skillfully. So up above, they don't have like a deep crevice here. They don't have bones sticking out here. It's a J spine, behind, and the rest of the spine pretty straight up and down. And if you look at modern anatomy books, that's not what we're being told. We're being told that, this is normal, S-shaped spine. You see this in every chiropractic chart. You see it in every anatomy book. And what I'm claiming is, no, this is the wrong paradigm. This is why we're in such trouble. We're following the wrong, the beat of the drum is wrong. Yeah. And we need to go back in time and look at older anatomy books. This one comes from an anatomy book published in 1911. And you can see this is where the behind would be. And there's a very significant angle at L5S1. And then in the small of the back, there isn't this so-called natural lumbar curve. It's pretty straight up and down. And so I'm claiming that we are overdue. We need a paradigm shift. We've been using the wrong paradigm. Like every ergonomic chair is made to fit this specification, to provide lumbar curve. Every car seat has lumbar cushion to make a curve there or support whatever curve you have there. And I'm saying it's not the right curve. The curve needs to be lower. And our L5S1 disc is wedge-shaped, which fits perfectly into this wedge-shaped intervertebral disc space if you have your behind.
I got you. So,
yeah.
Okay, just a quick question on this. So you're saying that some of the anatomy work that we've got from the 90s, 80s, maybe even 70s is too late. The posture was already not good at that point compared to ancestral societies, which were maybe in the 1800s or early 1900s. And therefore, the information that we have in all these textbooks and what we're being taught is flawed and not up to date, or how you should be living.
It's not really based on research. They just, illustrators draw averages. You see a bunch of x-rays, you see a bunch of corpses, you draw what you see. Mm-hmm. And you assume that that's normal since everybody has something clustered around that. But the problem is when you have an 85% incidence of back pain, do you want to copy the average? Resoundingly, no. You want to go back in time. You want to go to other cultures. You want to look at little kids. You want to look at functional human beings and see what they've got going and imitate that, which is what we do in our methodology. We help people imitate not just their spinal shapes, but all sorts of related things like the way they walk and the way they bend and the way they sit and lie and lift. So this is how, these are life exercises, which are the most influential on the architecture of your body. So we want people to have primal architecture, the architecture you were born with, that you were meant to have, that your ancestors had. And then things don't wear and tear, and you age well, and you have a productive life, and you're not hobbled by all sorts of aches and pains, which it's crazy how much we are challenged in modern times.
Yeah.
And,
sorry, one more follow-up question on that, Esther. Obviously, in the last 15, maybe even 20 years, we've had the advent of the personal computers. In the last 15 years or so, we've had a lot of cell phones all around the world. So that's obviously exacerbated the problem because now our heads are tilted down and we're hunched forward, working the computer all day, at least the folks that are doing computer-based or desk-based jobs. So
well, it doesn't have to be, actually, it doesn't have to be so terrible, because you can do it really well. Like, I'm actually going to share a slide with you to explain that. Like, because we blame sitting, we blame computers, and that's, it's an easy scapegoat. There's obviously a problem. Something's got to be to blame. So put it on the computers. But if you actually look at the data, and here I have data from 3 kinds of people. So sure enough, sedentary workers. Here we have age on the x-axis. We have disc narrowing, which is a measure of wear and tear on the y-axis. And with age, you see that the discs are wearing and tearing. And so we blame sitting, and we have kind of cute sound bites like sitting is the new smoking and sitting kills you and all those kinds of very well-known little ditties. But, people have to earn their living some way. And so if you're not going to be sitting, what are you going to do? Probably manual labor. And you look at the data on the manual laborers, it's much worse. Like they have much worse disc narrowing with age. And nobody in the Western modern world has good trajectory. It's just, and we just call it normal, wear and tear, and we blame that we haven't evolved to be upright, which is ludicrous. We've been upright for 6.5 million years, and that's a long time even by evolutionary standards, and we're totally fine upright. If you examine so many indigenous populations, they're doing just fine. It's just in very recent times, we've forgotten how to be upright. So what we like to teach people is how to be like the Beale tribals here. So this research was done by a guy who took his X-ray machine in the middle of tribal India. It's amazing. And discovered that at age 50, the discs are pristine. They're indistinguishable from the discs of the 20-year-olds. Wow. So that's pretty unheard of in our culture. But what I teach people is to do what these people are doing. Every time that discs would be damaged or are getting loaded, then there's a very particular technique. I call it the inner corset. And we have a free 15-page PDF on our website that is chapter 5 from my book on how to get the exact muscles. It's the deep abdominal muscles, the deep back muscles in a very particular combination. It's not the ones that most people focus on. Most people focus on rectus and do crunches. Crunches are a miserable exercise. They crunch your discs, they crunch your nerves. The Canadian Army has thrown them out. The US Army doesn't allow you to do it if you have a back problem. Wrong muscle and huge amount of damage to the discs and the nerves. So we teach people how to do different, like what the Beale tribal guys are doing. When they lift a weight, they know how to become slender and tall, and then that's easing apart the vertebrae, and so the discs have plenty of room. They're not getting worn and torn. The nerves are not getting impinged. And, these are techniques that are totally available to all of us. It's extremely frustrating to have these little secrets well established, working every day for our students, and not have them be more widely known. So I'm very grateful to you that you're bringing this to your audience, because people really need to know these things. They just go under the knife and suffer and get cortisone injections and get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And the stuff doesn't work well. And if you want, I can share data on that later, on how poorly everything works.
Right. So you make a good point, Esther. So if computer phones and your computers are not the problem, hunching is not the problem, and even people that are not on their computer desk jobs are not having these, or are actually having these issues, how does only a few pockets of indigenous cultures do so well and everybody else has forgotten in the last how many ever years? How's that happened?
Well, I think a lot of deterioration of posture happens when you transplant generations away from each other. So, in the US, look what happened. Huge amount of transplanting, right? So you take someone and they go off and they're pioneers somewhere totally different. And, like kids will go to the other end of the country and set up their families there. So then you lose that kinesthetic thread that gets passed down in indigenous cultures. People like grandparents are influencing the way the grandkids are being carried, shaped in effect. And, that's very valuable. And it's not stuff that's written down or even articulated to tell over a phone, So that's something we're trying to do, because in our culture, we have transplanted ourselves. And then that also, when you don't know when you don't have a tradition, a strong tradition of how you carry a baby, how you model the baby, how you, and then you're subject to the fashions. And that's a problem because the fashions have really done us in the last 100 years, tucked pelvis look, the flapper look. That's a serious bad turn we took. And we're still suffering, and the models on the runway are still doing this, like kind of leading with their hips position that's ruinous for the spine and the hip joints, and the neck comes forward. And, so we're trying to educate people.
Right.
And
Okay, so let's talk about a practical example, and I think you want to show folks. Let's just take sitting because people are sitting a lot these days, more so than we should. How can people sit correctly, align their posture and spine so they don't have back pain as a result of sitting?
Okay, so I am going to switch over to my side view, and where you can, and I would educate your crowd on how to do this. So 3 implements you can use. This is the chair I designed. So it's nice. It has these rubberized nubs that you can lengthen your back up against and then stick them there. So now part of your weight is hanging from the sticky nubs. So for people who don't want to go for a whole chair, this is very nice. This is the stretch sit cushion, and it has these nubs in the back, and you have to fasten it. We have extension straps, and you want to have a firm vertical hold. And if you don't want to buy anything, then you should get something with friction. Towel is good. I don't have my towel handy, but imagine this is a towel and you want to strip, and then you can put it side to side. This will work well on a fabric chair, but if it's metal or plastic or wood, it'll just slide down. It won't hold you up. It won't give you traction. And the whole point of this technique that I'm going to share, which is called stretch sitting, is that you're putting traction into your back as you sit. So which variant should I use? Let me use this. This is kind of a bad chair, but by adding this, it's become a good chair. So you want to put your bum back, well back in the chair. Now this chair slants back a little too much for me, so I'm actually going to fold my cushion under so I have a double thickness. And that's what I do in a lot of cars, because the cars have these bolsters that stick your shoulders forward, have these horrible headrests that stick your neck forward. So I build it up. Sometimes I build it up even more. I put something behind so that I'm away from those horrible bolsters and horrible neck protrusion. It's called it's not a neck rest anymore. It's a neck, they have a different name, constraint or something. But okay, so here we are. And now bottom back. Now you come away from whatever it is, the towel, the nubs on the chair, this nubs on the cushion. And now you make sure the cushion stays in place. And then you can push on the seat or the bars or the cushion or the back, and you make your back extra tall. So you're pushing down and you're lifting the top away from the bottom. Now notice that I'm staying curved forward, because if I arch my back, then I'm losing some of the length that I'm creating with my arms. So you want to create length with your arms, push the top of you away from the bottom of you, and then kind of unroll against the backrest. And now I've hitched my back here, and I can feel a boost. My back is getting stretched as I sit. So this could be me at the computer or me in my car. It was originally, the stretch sit cushion was originally made for a car. And or in the sofa. I have these cushions just on the sofa. And, if you're in the market for a chair, this chair has a lot of advantages. It has place for your behind to go behind. We had to actually have this custom forged because all the commercial backup rests, that's what this is called, are straight up and down. No room for the bum. And so stretch sitting, going back, and then pushing, hooking, and now being stretched in effect. And that is really nice. You want your J spine, you want the upper part of your spine to be stretched, straight, and tall. And this just facilitates it. This also facilitates stack sitting, which it has a built-in wedge. And so now your behind's behind, and now the rest of you just stacks easily. So that's another nice thing about this. Okay. Was that satisfactory?
Yes, that's great. Thank you for showing it. So for the people that are listening on the podcast, you can head on over to this video, which I'll share on the show
Okay.
notes page, which is
Right.
on antiaginghacks.net/better posture. And Esther,
Yeah.
your team sent me one of the stretch sit, I believe is the
Cushions.
yeah, and
Cool.
I've been using it this week, and I want to share with the audience my experience. And I've got a decent chair, or at least for
Yep.
my work desk, but it leans me far too much back. So when I'm working, I'm not resting my back. I'm leaning forward because I want to be
Right.
in the forward motion,
Then you're
right?
not getting the support and the
Right.
possible stretch and traction, which is very nice to have. So
Yeah.
you want to tie that cushion in a way that it hangs firmly vertically.
Mhm.
Yeah, you don't want to tie it around the side. You want to tie it around the top so that it's there for you. Do you want to do that?
Yeah,
And
so I
I'll
did.
guide you.
I didn't tie it yet, but on my work chair, I had put it behind, and it kind of just stuck there under my shoulder blades.
Yep,
And what it allowed me to do is instead of leaning back and not being totally engaged in my work, it allowed me to be neutral, which then I
nice.
could work. I could just sit there and work in that position for much
Nice.
longer, much longer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'll serve to make a crazy leaning chair more upright. That's true. But even more valuable is that stretch, that traction that you can get from it if you just hoist yourself a little tall and hook yourself to the nubbies.
Yeah, it actually feels good too while you're sitting stretched up.
Totally.
I don't know what it is. You just feel more lighter.
Yep. Yeah,
As I've
because
been
you've
feeling.
taken pressure off the discs and the nerves, and the muscles are getting a nice stretch. So instead of having your sitting time be compromised,
Mhm.
you're actually doing something that makes it healthier. It's
Yeah,
therapeutic.
yeah,
And
absolutely. So
people spend a lot of
luckily,
money going and sitting in traction machines and but you can just do this just in the background as you work, as you drive, as you sit on the sofa talking to people. So that is valuable.
yeah. So luckily, I don't have back pain, but it just made me feel so much better. I was sitting taller. I was sitting lighter for some reason.
Nice. Nice.
So I would recommend this. This is a great product that you've come up with.
Thank you.
Now, speaking of stretching your back, Esther,
Yeah.
I've interviewed Dr. Peter Martoni in the show a few weeks ago, who's a chiropractor by trade, but one of his passions is to help people sleep on their back, which he says elongates your spine, which reduces the pressure on your body. And he's got before and after x-rays to improve that this spine is getting more elongation. So
Uh-huh.
again, kind of similar concept that you're talking about was stretching the spine in a seated position. What are your thoughts on the role of posture in restful sleep, for example?
Yeah, it's really important, like if your discs and nerves are talking to your brain all night long, and then the brain has a couple of things to do. It can toss and turn you in a not necessarily successful effort to find a better position, or it can tighten up a muscle to try to protect something, and then you wake up all spasmed and so on. So those are not useful things. So you don't want any conversation between your body and your brain at night. You want to just sleep restfully. And the way you can get there is to put a good shape and a good length in your spine. So this technique that I just showed, stretch sitting, extrapolates to lying down. There are a few more details. There are more touch points because your whole back is contacting the floor. So there's a particular technique, and we have videos on these things, like on YouTube and such. So if people go to our site, they can find all kinds of things. And stretch lying on the back is relatively easy to learn. Those are the things that people also learn from my book without before they come in. Stretch sitting, stretch lying on the back. Those are easy to digest. And then people start getting a little fuzzy. It's, harder to learn stretch lying on the side, for example. There you want to create a J spine, and it's a little trickier. But on the back, you kind of dig in your elbows and you unroll your back one piece at a time. And that's the rough, but then there's nuance. So, the book has step-by-step illustrations, and we have a DVD explaining troubleshooting and common mistakes and things. So there are a lot of resources, but it is, because it's a kinesthetic thing, the best way to learn is with a coach. So I put most of my energy into training teachers who can train other people, because I can only go so far. So I can only touch so many people. So now we have 50 teachers around the world teaching in-person classes. Now, of course, in COVID times, that has changed. So we have a dozen teachers who are trained to do our new online format that I'm very thrilled with. And we do, online initial consultations, and, just like you've seen me switch between camera views, that's turned out to be very effective in teaching. And we also have our students have two devices, one front, and then the iPhone catches the side view. So we can actually see what's going on remarkably effectively. And because it's online, it's very practical to have very short lessons. And that way they only have like one thing that they're really marinating in before they go to the next. So it becomes very digestible, and we're seeing amazing results.
That's great. And I believe you'd mentioned this earlier, is you're doing one small tip per day when people enroll. How long does this program last for people that might be interested?
Yeah, so we have 18 lesson course, the elements course, after the initial consultation, where people get an overview of their shape and how it relates to their symptoms and their way of bending and so on. Then they start in earnest learning one thing a day, one little posture nugget a day. And there are 18 of them. And we always advise people to space them close together, because you don't want to wait forever for your nice results. And so it's every day or every other day or 3 days in the week, but not more spread than that generally. And that way, it gives them a chance to really digest and marinate in this new thing, and they're ready for the next. And in between, we have homework that gets sent out, little homework, not overwhelming, but things to read, a little video to watch. And then they also have a document where they journal or ask questions. So that's all done between the lessons, so that the lessons that, they're very short lessons and they're very crisp. We really need to hit a home run each lesson, so that they get transformed at the end of the 18 lessons. It's a transformation. And then they join my alumni program, where they get a little nugget every day. But now it doesn't matter what order things are in. It's just enrichment and reminder and more fun. It's less formal, and they don't get homework and things anymore. They just come and have fun.
Yeah, repetition and reminder is great, because
Really
the more
helpful.
you listen or hear something, the better your chances of follow through. You miss nuggets. There's a lot of information flying at us at all times of the day.
Yeah.
Now, Esther, how long? So if people sign up for your 18-day class,
Yeah.
how long before they see results as it
First few
pertains back?
days. They're already getting results. It's quite remarkable. Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's great to hear. I'm definitely gonna get. I want to learn the stretch sleeping on your back technique, so I'm going to look up your videos or possibly just get your book and go
Cool.
through some of that, because I am nerding out on sleeping on my back as much as possible.
Yeah. It
Any,
really makes a difference if you put all your pieces in their natural architecture. Then the blood flows better. Nothing is impinged and complaining to the brain, and you can have really peaceful, wonderful, deep sleep.
Mhm. Now, obviously, how is for somebody that wants to get started or explore your site and products further, what would you recommend that they start with? How do they onboard with Esther?
So we have free online workshops that they can attend where it's a little more in depth about, the overview. And I always like to teach one little thing, no matter what I do. Um, and then after that, they can do an initial consultation. And it could be with me or it could be with any of our online teachers. And all the online teachers are trained by me, and it saves money to go to them. So, they're really adept. So that's what I encourage people to do. If they have a very complex thing and they need my additional experience, then it's worth coming, getting the initial consultation with me. And then I'll recommend which teacher they might continue with. Or they decide to continue with me, and then they go for the 18 lesson elements course, and then they join the party, or the coming whenever they want. It's a daily program and it's posted on the website for a day, and then they get to just remember one thing. In fact, that program is what influenced or what generated this elements course. I saw how well it was working for alumni, and then I realized, when COVID hit, we should do this with our basics, like make it smaller chunks and more fun. So that's where it came from, actually. The alumni program gave me the idea for how to deal with COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
People are at home and they're working with their chairs and their cushions and pillows and sofas. So that's an additional advantage. But I think the breakdown is especially valuable, and the fact that they don't have to commute to come anywhere. You can be in Norway and be learning from our California teacher, so that's cool.
Okay, now is this all on your website?
It is. So it's on the homepage. You find all of these things described. Because right now, in most places, we are not teaching classes. Like here in California, I'm not teaching at all. And so we are only doing the online initial consultations and the elements program, and then the alumni online university program.
Got it.
So
what's the website, Esther?
It's Gokhale method. So Gokhale is difficult to spell. Gokhale method.com. Mm-hmm. But if people just look up Esther posture, they'd probably find their way, because we've been, a lot of, search results come up high. The New York Times result will just remember posture guru, Esther, any of those terms. But it's Gokhale, Gokhale method.com.
Okay, and I'll put that link on the show notes for this episode as well.
Cool.
Which is going to be at antiaginghacks.net/better posture. So Esther, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your knowledge.
So welcome. It's a pleasure. Thanks for asking me such nice questions and bringing our work to your audience.
Absolutely.
Bye.